My name is Michael Secen. I'm 43 years old and I'm gay. And I'm open about my gayness right now, but it hasn't always been this way because I was born in religious surroundings. And even when I was a little boy, I was always a little bit different. Well, people thought of me as being very emotional, and I often heard people say, "You should have been a girl." And I remember even thinking and wishing that I was a girl because I would have been more accepted with who I am, because I never felt comfortable or I was never interested in playing with cars, soccer, football, whatever. I didn't like the boys things, what they say that boys should like. I actually rather played with girls, so I was always different, and that wasn't really welcome, and I always felt a little bit unwelcome in this world. Then I grew up. I constantly stayed different, and of course it became more obvious when I started going to school. And then when I was a teenager, when I was about 11 years old, I started to figure out why I felt different, that I was attracted to someone others weren't. And it made me extremely confused. Especially the other part that made me even more confused, or I would say even afraid, was me being part of this religious community, faith community, where this wasn't accepted at all. It was rather discouraged or even thought as an illness and something that needs to be healed. So in this surrounding, I actually decided that it's going to be a secret. It's going to be something that's my story, hidden story, and I can't tell anyone. And within this time in my growing up, when I was about 14, 15, I remember going to youth meeting where we had a person talking about sexuality. And although it wasn't meant to be they didn't want to talk about same-sex topics or even mention anything about same-sex relationships, I asked the person who was talking, I asked him, "What would you do if someone would come through the door right now and say I'm gay?" And this person said, without a moment of thought, at least I experienced it that way, that he just said, "I would tell him, go away from me, Satan." And from that moment on, I actually really thought, okay, so this means that I am actually not just, that there's not just something bad within me, but I am the embodied evil. And nobody should know about this. And at that moment, I definitely decided that no one will ever find out my secret. And it was extremely difficult to carry this secret, to have this secret, because it's not just that I'm not talking about it, but I was constantly aware of how am I moving my hands, who am I looking at? If I see a guy that I like, it was normal for my peers to say, "Oh, this girl is handsome," or "She's really beautiful," or "This guy is handsome and looks good." And, and they would, of course, if they saw them on the street, they would follow them with their eyes. And I was always conscious of my eyes, which direction they move towards, or You know, it was the best thing. I was always wearing glasses and I didn't have sunglasses. So when I got sunglasses for the first time where others couldn't see my sunglasses, I remember the relief that I can actually look at a guy who I liked, who was handsome. And yeah, there was a huge fear of if they find out, it would be a moment where I lose everything. I could lose my family, I could lose all my friends, and it was out of the question. And because I was also within this religious community and I was a person of faith at that time, it was important to me to live a life that I thought that I should live, to be the good person. I really hoped that I will change and then that I can change my sexuality. At that point, I even kind of thought, okay, maybe I'm bisexual. And again, because I was in a religious surrounding, sex before marriage was also out of the question. So, you know, it was even out of the question to try and see, to test it for myself, if I could be attracted to women or not. So I actually decided to get married to a woman. I didn't want to be alone. And I somehow made up in my head what I would really like in a person that I would be with. And I fell in love with a woman. This is something that is really hard to actually explain, because later, when I let myself be who I am and came out as gay, I realized what it actually means to be in love. So I would say maybe I liked her a lot as a person. And we started a friendship and became closer and started going out together. And that's where I got married. And after several years, we decided to have a child, which I was afraid of how that would turn out if we ever get divorced. But sometime 2 years into our marriage, I actually started having depressions. And these depressions, I would try to work them out. Luckily, I told my wife to be, 6 months before we got married, I told her that I had that I experienced same-sex attraction, and I don't know what it means. And we both kind of thought, yeah, maybe we can change it. If we love each other enough, it'll be possible to change. So she knew that I struggle with this. I mean, I struggled with not accepting myself. And so I would try to talk with her about the depressions that would come. She knew why I was depressed and what was happening. So, we always try to find other ways of pulling me out of these depressions, and we managed somehow. But these depressions came back every year, and each year it was more and more severe. And it was harder to deal with the fact that I'm actually hiding and keeping this huge secret and this feeling of just being empty. I even realized later that, of course, our sex life suffered more and more. It was harder and harder for me to sleep with my wife. And it was really, what I figured later is that I actually have some symptoms. For a very long time, I couldn't have a woman touch me. I had some symptoms like I was raped, but not that my former wife raped me, but I was, pushing myself to engage into something that I wasn't really comfortable with. And that was more like an obligation than something I really wanted and enjoyed. And then I met this guy who worked for the community. He was open in his working space. He was open about his sexuality. And here I was actually wondering, should I take my life? Would it be easier for people to accept my death than me being gay? And this is where he actually put a different question into my head of, would it be possible to do meaningful work, to invest my life in something that I enjoy and be openly gay? And this is actually where my process started of deciding to come out and also my process of coming out. It was filled with huge fear. I didn't know how the people will react. I actually expected that I will lose all my friends, especially the friends that are connected to the religious community, faith community, as I was connected to back then. And it was a scary time. Also, my parents, I was living with my family in a house that my father built. And I was expecting him to say to leave the building and not show up ever again in front of his face. So it was a question of, I might lose everything that I know. Coming to that point where I actually decided to accept myself, but being aware of what that might cost me, my first thing that I wanted to kind of do is to feel more safe. And for me, that was to build up a network of support, to know that there are at least a few people that I can count on and not be totally alone if others leave me, if my parents push me out of the building I live in, if most of the friends say they don't want to have to do anything with me now. I needed at least a few people that will be beside me and that I know that I won't be completely alone. So first of all, it was very important to have this one friend who was with me in all this process. And it's actually a friend that was the first person in this whole world that found out about me being gay when I was 21. So she was there again when I was 36 and I made this decision to come out. So this is also something that made it very hard. I'm 36. I lived this whole life that was for many people a lie. I mean, it was also for me, I was living partially a lie about who I was. I was trying to live this straight life. There was the children. I was scared what will happen to my children. How will the divorce affect them if when I get divorced? So there were so many questions coming to my mind. And then there was my friend when I was on this trip and happened to get to know this gay guy in New Zealand. My brother was with me, luckily, and I decided to come out to him. And he had an amazing reaction, so he was extremely supportive. And when I came back to Croatia, I started talking to come out to some friends that also a few of them became my allies and stood behind me while I was going through this process of coming out. And it was really hard for me and my wife back then to go through this process. I was really trying to do my best to listen to the pain my wife is going through, to take care of her and her feelings, and also, you know, take care of the people who actually I came out to. I remember it was extremely hard to come out, and at the beginning I was actually, every time I started coming out, I was crying. It was just such a difficult thing to do, which nowadays is very different. But even when I came out to my parents, I had the whole support system. My brother was there with me, my friend was there with me. So that made a huge difference, because my parents didn't react that well, especially my father. And it was hard to take it because I was on this trip. My dad started talking about how I was brainwashed and that it can't be true because I have 2 children. But even he changed his mind after a while. So after about 6 months, he called me and told me he wants to talk to me, and he told me that he loves me no matter what. So slowly it did become easier. And I must say the hardest part was the divorce and taking care of the kids, especially my daughter, because she was about 8 back then. And it was important for us that she understands that, you know, she's not the reason she's great as she is, and that we still love her, and that she's not going to lose any parent, but the parents are going to be here. And then, of course, the story with my wife, I would say there was an important sentence my wife said. She said, you know, as a friend, I want you to be happy and to accept yourself as you are, and I want to support you as your friend, but as your wife, I'm extremely angry with you. And I really tried to give her the freedom to be angry, because I know it wasn't easy, and I could understand that it isn't. But I'm very proud of how we handled the whole situation, and the divorce and the children, and how we are still in a good relationship as parents for our children. We are there for our children, and we can spend time together and talk to each other, which is a very important thing. Yeah, now there is the question of, is it better being out or not? And I would definitely say it's so much better to be out. I remember when I finally came out, when I already came out to several people and to my family. And this first summer, I remember telling my friends, I feel like I can finally breathe, like I'm actually for the first time taking a real deep breath in my life. And it was just this huge secret, which was kind of like this huge rock somewhere here in my chest, making me control my behavior, what I'm saying, being really careful of who I look at, where my eyes go. Do I look too gay if I use my hands while I speak? It was just gone, and I felt so much lighter. And even now, I won't say that the whole process of getting divorced and taking care of my kids, my life turned overnight. I left my home. I started collecting things like plates, pots, everything I had from scratch, from the beginning. But still, I wouldn't change a thing. It was the most important decision, and having now a partner and just knowing and feeling so much more authentic and who I am. And it's just so much easier also to discover who I am, who I want to be, and where I want to go in the future.